Hi, everyone. I'm
Well,
Andrea Bohn. Go ahead.
well, thank you for being with us. So before we pull up your slides, can you give us a self-introduction?
Sure. I'm Andrea Bohn. I'm a CPA. I spent several years working in different business sectors, including skilled nursing, affordable housing, and hospitality management. And then transitioned several years ago to higher education, began my work in the finance department at Wake Forest University, and then 8 years ago transitioned to student affairs. I currently serve as the Associate Vice President for Campus Life at Wake Forest, and my responsibility includes the Chief Fiscal Officer for the division. So I have budget and finance, human resources, marketing and communications, information technology, enterprise risk management, and strategic planning for the division. On a personal note, in a couple of months, I'll celebrate my 30th wedding anniversary to my husband. And I have two children, Landry, 25, and Nicole, that's a high school senior. And so she'll be graduating soon. So that's it. We can start with my title slide.
Okay, well, we have your slides pulled up, so take it away.
Thanks. So I'm really excited to be talking with you all, especially about a subject that I'm really passionate about, which is something that I call creating sustainable work environments, which I hope really leads us to creating sustainable work cultures. And most of my comments today will be focused on issues for women in the workplace, but these issues are not gender specific and really can apply to anyone in our workforce. I know we've all read a lot about the Great Resignation that we're currently facing in our nation. And as I mentioned in my bio, human resources for our division is part of my responsibility. And student affairs, employment, and higher education has really experienced a significant impact in the Great Resignation, with higher resignation rates than many other areas due to the impact of COVID-19 response. And in our division at Wake, we employ about 250 staff and 500 to 600 student employees. So I've spent a lot of time and energy over the past few months focused on staff retention and recruiting new staff. Next slide. So for today, I'd like to really use the framework of a what, so what, now what, really as we think about our discussion. And one way to use the framework is to ask ourselves these questions. What patterns do we notice? So what? So what do these patterns mean to our collective work? And now what? Now what are you going to do? And what are we going to do? Next slide. The what, record numbers of women have left the workforce or are considering leaving the workforce or changing jobs. Next. So according to the CDC, 2/3 of caregivers in the United States are women, meaning that they provide daily or regular support to children, adults, or people with chronic illness. And women who are caregivers, we know, have a much greater risk for poor health, for physical and mental health, including depression and anxiety. And COVID-19 adds even more stressors to caregiving responsibilities. I've had so much empathy for colleagues and friends that are caring for young children, particularly with the uncertainty of unreliable childcare due to COVID-19 exposures or staffing shortages in their schools and in their daycare centers. One friend with two preschool-age children shared with me recently that she's only had 1 week since the beginning of January that both of her children were able to attend preschool at the same time. So that's 6 weeks that she has had unreliable daycare for one or more of her children. And we all know that caregiving responsibilities for older adults are also an added stressor for many people. And then there are those that are in the sandwich generation that are caring for both children and parents at the same time. Next. And according to a McKinsey & Company report, it was a 2020 report, the pandemic had a near immediate impact on women in the workforce. And so 1 in 4 women are considering, this was in 2020, so we know that's even exacerbated since then, but are considering leaving the workforce or downshifting their careers. And while women have been impacted, three major groups have experienced some of the largest challenges. Those are working mothers, women in senior management positions, and Black women. This has been particularly impactful for women with parents that are parents of kids under 10. So the rate that group is leaving the workforce is 10 percentage points higher than men that are parents of children under 10. Next. We also know that there's been a significant impact on staff of color. And one of the truths that's really been exposed to COVID-19 is that while the trauma and grief of COVID-19 and the racial injustices are widespread, the impact's been felt even more strongly in some communities. And COVID-19 has been much more harmful to Black and Brown communities due to broad lack of access to quality health care, quality housing, remote work, quality childcare, internet accessibility, and access to food. But COVID-19 is only part of the struggles endured by Black and Brown communities. As a nation, we've witnessed ongoing hate-based murders, people of color such as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, Tony McDade, and Elijah McClain. The cumulative impacts of these traumatic experiences on colleagues of color is exhausting, and many are experiencing toxic stress levels that affect mental and physical health. Next. So what? So what do these patterns mean to our collective work? I think if these trends are left unaddressed, they'll just exacerbate existing inequalities and reverse decades of progress toward an inclusive economy for women and people of color. There's a risk of the slow return of women to the workforce may even further widen the underrepresentation of women in managerial and corporate leadership ranks for years to come. And according to the McKinsey Women in the Workplace study, even pre-COVID, 1 in 5 direct reports to a CEO are women, and only 1 in 30 was a woman of color. And so we can see how these collective changes or the collective impact of shifts in the workforce for women will just be exacerbated. Next. According to a recent MetLife survey, one encouraging signs emerging that could really signal greater economic relief. 2 in 3 women who've been forced out of work say they plan to return. So that's really encouraging for us. Most of the folks that have left the workforce were in search of better roles better suited for their needs and their interest. And employment experts say that businesses have to turn their attention toward work environments and solutions that they can provide in order to hire and retain working women. So according to this MetLife report, women are overwhelmingly looking for increased flexibility. So 78% of women reported they want increased flexibility, and 73% are looking for career progression opportunities in their current or future employer. So I'd say that we really need to, as current employers, be focused on how we can do these things so that they're not looking for other employment opportunities. The majority of women also say that it's important that their employer provides economic incentives, tailored benefits, upskilling programs, and DEI programs in order for them to feel well supported in the workplace. And many women believe they would benefit from increased flexibility in their jobs and clear opportunities to advance their career, whether through mentorship, upskilling, or dedicated tracks that lead to promotions. Next. According to that McKinsey report that I referenced earlier, the COVID-19 crisis shook the economy, turned people's lives upside down at work and at home. And a heightened focus on racism and racial violence triggered a reckoning on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And 2020 put extraordinary pressure on both companies and employees. According to the McKinsey report, an overwhelming majority of companies say that managers' efforts to promote employee well-being are critically important now more than ever, and that DEI has to be a great area of focus. What this report shows is that women leaders are doing more than men in similar positions to support people on their teams. For example, they're helping team members navigate work-life challenges, ensuring that their workloads are manageable, and checking in on overall well-being. Next. And here are some of the reasons we know talented employees stay with their employers. They believe in the company mission, and vision. I think we're seeing that that's less and less important to people these days. They're inspired to work smarter, feeling valued, recognized, and respected. That may be more important than ever. Mentoring, being paid well, good benefits and incentives, satisfaction with their working environment, exciting and challenging work, great relationship with their superiors, work-life balance, and career growth, learning, and development opportunities. Next. Now what? Now what are you going to do? And now what are we going to do? Next. So in our division at Wake Forest, we're currently piloting a sustainable work program. And the program is intended to provide flexible options for staff to help support work-life balance by offering opportunities for flexible work arrangements, which may include remote work or flexible work options. So we began with our university and division mission, and then we layered on top of that departmental mission, so that we're really using our mission-driven principles as we apply this throughout our division. So for example, we're a highly residential college, and we focus on a lot of in-person engagement and support for our students. So most of our work has to be done in person with our students or with one another, but we're looking for opportunities to say what doesn't have to be done in person, what can be done remotely, and really allowing opportunities for staff to find those areas and present a sustainable work plan. So then departments also determine what their core business needs are, such as we have to have someone answering the phones from Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or we have to have 3 out of 5 professional staff members in the office at a given time. So those are the departments are working through those things, and they're engaging staff in the discussion so that we're all buying into what kind of our baseline staffing expectations are. We also agreed that our departments would likely have different expectations due to their unique business needs. So for example, in our division, we have 24/7 operations, such as university police and residence life and housing. And then we also provide after-hour support for students in crisis through our counseling center, our student health service, and our chaplain's office. And then there are units on our team that really have much more typical, like Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 hours. And so we're really allowing each department to be flexible based on their unique needs and how we need to support students. Again, grounding it all in what the business needs are. And we also encourage departments to really think about what their non-negotiables are. So for my team, we agreed that when we're on Zoom, everyone has to be on camera. And then in-person events take priority. We also provided definitions for different types of flexible work concepts so that we were all speaking the same language. We also provided lots of resources and support for managers and encouraged them to think creatively about any requests that they got for flexible work arrangements. So we really encouraged them to try to say yes, at least for some of it, or at least try things out. All of our work has been grounded in equity, and ensuring our practices are equitable was of utmost importance to us, even though we have really different operating units. We have a requirement for regular check-ins between staff and their managers. And we started the pilot program in November of 21. And so we're doing a 3-month pilot. We'll use March to assess our pilot program, and then we plan to engage staff, managers, and leaders throughout the division as we receive input on the program to really think about what it looks like going forward. Excuse me. Early reports and indicators from staff that I've talked with, staff are reporting increased well-being, increased productivity, particularly on their days that they're able to work remotely. They're kind of trading in that water cooler catch-up time for for really extra work, and they're really engaged in and appreciative of the opportunity to have flexibility. And staff are reporting overall satisfaction with the program. And, one of the fears I would say early on with some of our managers and leaders, I think we're really more around performance management than they were around flexible work options. So what if someone takes advantage? What if this or that? And we've really tried to be really clear in what's performance management and what is an acceptable or a good working flexible work plan. And also being really clear with staff that this is a privilege, it's not an expectation. And so you really do have to be in good standing, and your performance will be managed separately. Next. We also know that continuing education programs are really important. Staff are looking for growth opportunities. So here are a few examples of educational opportunities. So within our division, university-wide, we have LinkedIn Learning, which is a great opportunity. It has anything and everything you could imagine on video for learning opportunities. And then within our division, we have professional development opportunities for all of our roles. We have DEI education and training programs and departmental and divisional learning opportunities. And we added several years ago a tuition assistance program. And we have 5, I believe, that have completed their doctoral degrees, several that have completed master's degrees. And I really thought that this would be kind of a launch for people to leave, but those folks have stayed here. So we've helped provide education, they've grown in their roles, and they are staying. So it's actually been a retention factor. Next. Employee benefit programs. In addition to our traditional employee benefit programs, I think companies should also consider employee assistance programs, elder care assistance, child care assistance, employee recognition programs. Our employees really need to know that they're seen and appreciated. And also opportunities for staff to volunteer. This is a win-win situation because it helps with employee well-being, and it also supports our communities, and can also provide a great opportunity for team building exercises if departments choose to volunteer together. Next. And for employee well-being, some of the things that we consider are, scheduling walking meetings if the weather's nice, particularly on-site health clinics. We have a fairly new health clinic, really, that started since COVID. I think that's been super helpful to faculty and staff. Mindfulness programs and fitness memberships are just a handful of ways to think about and support employee well-being. And next slide. Now what? Now what are you going to do, and what are we going to do? And I just love this quote by Lisa Congdon: "Your voice is your superpower." I was thinking about, before I was really in a leadership role at Wake Forest, I came to Wake, and my children are both adopted. My son was a baby, but we weren't planning on adopting again. But I saw that Wake didn't have any parental leave for adoption. And I'm really passionate about adoption work. And so I went to our chief HR officer and talked with him about adding that benefit. And again, wasn't advocating for myself. I didn't plan to adopt another child at that time. And I remember him saying to me at the time, like, "Andrea, you want us to pay someone to bond with their child?" And I said, yes, I do. I think we should. And so it started out rough, but there were several other people who kind of got behind it. And together we were able to help administration see a way for having a parental leave policy that included coverage for adoption leave. The great thing was it was even better than we had anticipated, because they expanded it to include, it was a parental leave policy, not just for mothers, but it was expanded so that fathers could also take advantage of the leave policy. And so I was one small voice, but was able to advocate. Later on, I actually adopted again and was able to use that benefit. And so I was really glad that we had gone through that effort. Just recently, I've been trying to advocate also for foster care for many people that foster to adopt. Aren't able to take advantage of the parental leave policy because it was the first 12 weeks following the birth or adoption of a child. Well, you can't really adopt in 12 weeks from the birth. So it's just not the way it works, particularly if you're fostering. And so people that were doing foster to adopt weren't able to take advantage of the parental leave policies. So we've been working on that as well. And just this month, Human Resources released a new leave policy that includes it also includes foster to adopt and also expands for the first 12 months after a child is born or adopted. So again, just small ways that we can all use our voices to enact change that can really be beneficial for everyone. And so I just hope that we'll all use our voices individually and collectively, wherever the opportunity arises, to advocate for and create sustainable work cultures by policy adjustments, systems, and norms that enhance our employee well-being. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And yes, if anybody has any, or if anyone would like to ask a live question, you can raise your hand or use the hand raising feature, and I can unmute you and you can ask Andrea a live question. But also please keep those questions coming to our chat. Let's see. Some of these are kind of hard for me to read, so I'm going through them now. Let's see. Here's one that's kind of interesting. This one says, we are a small startup. Any advice on filtering this down to companies without big budgets?
A lot of what we've done hasn't required a lot of financial resources. I think what I find is staff really want to be seen and valued. And so anything that we can do to recognize achievements of staff, celebrate everything that we can together. And then also, again, just wherever we can, being flexible in how we think about where and how people work. Again, with the baseline of like, we need to get the job done, but really trying to create a culture of trust where we trust that people will do their jobs and work well. I'll be honest, I've been trying to, for years, create opportunities particularly for women, because they're typically the ones that need it or request it, but to have flexible schedules as needed that help meet their family needs and or their personal needs. This is not just a family issue either, I should say. And I think that I've gotten back tenfold anything that, because people are so appreciative that we see and value the other parts of our complicated lives and that we're invested in them as humans. And so I think anything that we can do, small or large, you all may know we had a big fire close to campus recently, and our staff, I was, here through the middle of the night like many others. And so this week I sent out really small, but $25 Grubhub gift cards to folks that came in or that signed up to work certain shifts, to just really say thank you and that you're seen and appreciated. It didn't cost a lot, but I think there are just so many ways that we can help people feel seen and valued. And then there's so many resources online that are free resources, particularly for mindfulness or well-being programs, and again, learning opportunities.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we've had a lot of questions about flex workforces and working from home. I'm going to read this one. What do you think this new norm of working from home and the flexible workforce will do to the generation of workers who are fairly new to the workforce and need that stimulation and interaction?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see. We really don't have any, because of our environment, right? We don't have any that are 100% flat, remote. And that's because we're such an in-person and community. environment. So people might have a work from home day or a work from home 2 days, but we really are trying to also make sure that we have opportunities for engagement. We, there are many companies that are going to fully remote. I think there are going to be some interesting impacts of that long term, particularly economic ones, when people are, living in lower cost cities and earning higher salaries in a higher cost city. I mean, there are certainly economic impacts that we'll see. And I do think that it will be challenging from an engagement perspective. I have the advantage of working on a college campus. Again, we're highly residential, and I see that our students and our staff, for the most part, do still want to be in community with one another. But I think we're going to have to really be creative and think through ways to continue to engage people regardless of where or how they're working.
Well, that's great. So here's another question. The trust issue is tough when you have a very deadline-driven company. Those without kids at home are sometimes angry and feel ill towards those who are given grace because of kids or aging parents. How can you treat everyone differently and make sure everyone knows they're supported?
I really try not to look at the personal aspects of it, but really again, we really ground it in what the work needs, what the work requires, and then we're flexible where we can be within that. And so I think the more open, honest, and transparent we are in having conversations with our managers, with our staff, and with one another about any challenges, the more trust building that we do. So the better we can communicate through it all, the better we'll be. COVID was challenging when people didn't have daycare options, right? But now that that's normalizing more, I think that we don't have to consider that to the same degree. But I think if we really think about the work that needs to be done and what kind of measures can we look at to see if the work is getting done appropriately, et cetera, and really thinking beyond some of the time. I mean, one of the things we've learned is because someone might work. I have a staff member that's younger that really had a hard time getting here in the mornings, like didn't love that. So her work schedule now starts at like 9:30, but she works later. Well, it actually has helped in one area give extended resources to students because we have like longer hours now. So there are also other benefits from a business perspective. And again, I think performance management is something that we really just have to continue to monitor. And so if folks aren't meeting their expectations or doing what they need to, then we really have to address that as a performance management issue.
Oh, that's great. I think I'll let this be our last question before we move on to our panel discussion for the afternoon. So this question came in towards the end of your presentation, and it said, you spoke about the leave policy, which is wonderful. Do you think companies will have to make any changes to these leave policies now that staff is remote?
Well, we're not remote, but I don't think so. I mean, I would hope that we would continue to allow for appropriate leave, for parental leave or other leave policies that as a country we would continue to have appropriate. I mean, I think we all know that we're behind other countries in our leave policies for parental leave, and so wherever we can extend that would be great, but I think we want to honor that and have as much time. Now, what we may see is folks, and we've seen this some even before COVID, where folks take advantage of their leave that's not necessarily in the 112-week block of time, but they may do 6 weeks and then extend the other over another period of time. And so we may see more of that potentially.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, so before we move on to our panel, thank you for being with us today. Do you have any final advice or words of wisdom for all our listeners today?
I think the biggest thing is really having to, like, COVID has changed our world in many ways. We know that it has made complicated lives even more complex. And I think as leaders, we need to really be as flexible as possible, really begin to think of new ways in which we work together, and really continue to advocate for positive change that support women in the workforce. I'm just really concerned about the numbers of women that have left the workforce that couldn't see ways to take care of all of their responsibilities, and leaving or kind of downgrading their work, or taking a step back from their work, felt like the only option perhaps. And so I worry a little bit about the long-term implications of that. And so wherever we can continue to advocate and support for flexible opportunities, I know amazing women that don't want to work full-time, but would be great for, a smaller company or a part-time or a project work. And like finding those opportunities and looking for flexibility in what we offer, and everything doesn't have to be a full-time position, I think is what I would really advocate for.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.